On today's show, Google admits to the push for massive government censorship.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Sekulow. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome to Sekulow. Jordan is with me as well. We're going to have a packed show today. We want you to be a part of it. 1-800-684-3110. Of course, we are leading one of the top stories, which was Google essentially admitted, hey, yes, we were censoring. Yes, we have deactivated thousands of accounts, including YouTube accounts for a lot of people. We obviously knew that was happening.
Yes, because we knew well-known people, some who we were representing,
yeah,
some who are now the current deputy director of the FBI. Dan Bongino was at one of those people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a pretty big list. Look,
Gorka,
we continually,
Room, Bannon.
We continually fought with YouTube for quite a while. There were many times where we had an issue with them, went back and forth. Now, in the last year, YouTube has actually made a pretty strong, and Google's made a pretty strong effort to say, we were wrong, and we did this poorly. And they even put out videos saying, you can talk about life, you can talk about abortion. We're not going to censor that anymore. We're not going to they were essentially
There's been a huge
shadow banning
shift on social media
absolutely
to free speech.
So I want to give Google,
we need to do everything we can to keep it that way.
So I want to give Google a little bit of credit in this for saying this, but obviously the big part of it, which is what Mark Zuckerberg said now a couple of years ago on Joe Rogan, which is, yeah, we were doing this, but that is because the Biden administration was putting immense pressure on Google to censor Americans and remove content, even if that content did not violate YouTube policy.
And it scares them because they get the protection, Section 302 protection from lawsuits because people can post things. And if people do post things, you can't sue them because someone posts something horrible, even after they take it down.
Yeah.
That's part of the protection we have so that the internet and social media can continue to grow. And they're always concerned that the government holds that over their head. And here's what's key there. The government was holding it over their head. I mean, we knew likely Google wasn't just doing this to do it policy-wise, that there was something going on. And I'm telling you, the power of the federal government, because of that section.
Much scarier than you think.
Yes.
In that sense of like, you think Google almost bigger than the government, but really not really.
Not if you take away that provision, because then they would be open up to every time somebody puts something up that's quasi-defamatory, like all those videos you see of people,
plenty, most of YouTube,
places that are, say, you can't film and say, privacy, they'd be in a legal mess. But the big news is, one, they've unbanned all those accounts and made sure. But two, the much bigger news is that the Biden administration was telling them to ban the people.
Yes.
And I think just like they were with Twitter and other accounts, they were naming.
I think that's right, because some of the biggest names, obviously, and then some random ones would get called out.
They always do that.
But when you look at this, I mean, this is what Chairman Jim Jordan, thanks to the oversight of Jim Jordan, Google commits. This is what it says. Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations on topics such as COVID and elections an opportunity to return to the platform. The Biden administration also, again, they pretty much admitted, pressured them to remove content, even if it didn't violate them. And they said it was unacceptable and wrong. This is a big moment. I think it's something that we all need to, you can't necessarily say celebrate what Google is doing, because of course they did have to first commit these issues to get to this point. But if we're talking about moving forward here, I'm pleased with this.
I think right now, moving forward, the big tech content where you put your creations on are much more friendly to just free speech in general. We need to do everything we can to be their friend and to keep it that way.
Look, you're going to spawn new creators, too, because people were leaving en masse and going to Rumble, which Rumble's great. We're on there. We love them.
That means good and bad.
Yeah.
You're going to see lots of content you don't like, but as we've all said, that's what freedom of speech is about. There's very little speech that is illegal in the United States, and that's usually incitement. I don't want to get into all of that right now because it's very difficult to prove, but they do have power because they're a private company. So the more we can keep them open and honest and keep the government out, that's why we don't want the FCC, telling people either. These are wins for free speech.
We'll get to that coming up in the next segment. We'll also talk about how the ACLJ was directly involved in this.
Yes.
And we'll break that down coming up. And of course, we'll talk about Jimmy Kimmel's return. We'll get to more later on. 1-800-684-3110.
Google's control over what people hear, watch, read, and say is unprecedented. Almost 90% of internet searches in the United States use Google. Google's domination of the search engine market is so complete that to Google is now a commonplace verb.
Google announcing it will reinstate YouTube channels that were permanently banned for political speech, saying it was pressured by the Biden administration to remove content that did not even violate YouTube's policies. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee, a lawyer for Google said, quote, "It is unacceptable and wrong when any government, including the Biden administration, attempts to dictate how the company moderates content, and the company has consistently fought against those efforts on First Amendment grounds."
They were pushing social media companies, forcing them to censor people like me and, frankly, people like RFK Jr. He and I were probably the two people who faced the most overt censorship back in 2021.
Some of the bans were for posting about COVID-19 or the 2020 election. This comes after Representative Jim Jordan subpoenaed Alphabet's CEO, alleging that YouTube was a direct participant in the federal government's censorship.
So here's a company who said, yes, the Biden administration pressured us. We, in fact, did it. We kicked people off, took their channels from them. Those people are going to be reinstated. And we've admitted that what we did was not consistent with the First Amendment in any way.
They always, try to absolve themselves by saying, well, we censored based on what we knew at the time. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's actually an argument against censorship, because it's a concession that knowledge changes over time, which means that if it does change over time, you might be censoring the truth right now. So we shouldn't be engaged in censorship. The best way to get to the truth is through open discourse and debate.
Welcome back to Sekulow. We are also following the news out of Texas, the ICE facility shooting. We know Ted Cruz was out there. We know right now that 3 people were shot, 2 are dead, including the shooter. If more information comes out about that, we will. It seems like the FBI said they're probing it as a targeted attack of this ICE facility. We are, the ammo had anti-ICE messages in it. It just seems like another one of these horrible situations. Sadly, we have to report
as of
about.
Right now, we were saying the latest news, no ICE officials.
Yeah, that was latest. It was detainees.
It was actually detainees.
Is that correct, guys? That's right? Yeah.
So just horrible. I mean, no one should be doing that. The people were, first of all, whatever the politics of it were, anti-ICE. Why would you kill the people?
Shot into a vehicle. So maybe the thought was they were going to, but it was. Hey, I do want to play this. As we talk about this Google censorship, you said that we have a clip from Hillary Clinton. I think this is kind of a fun flashback. This is only from a year ago. This is not like a flashback from 10 years ago when we started talking about content moderation. Of course, look, this comes on the heels of everything that happened with Jimmy Kimmel. This comes on our involvement, even in this case specifically. Let's go ahead and hear Hillary Clinton.
If the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm.
Yes, I mean, it's real hard, social, psychological effects. And look, I don't disagree with that in the sense of there are real social and psychological effects of social media. You got to be very careful of what you allow your kids to see, even what you allow in your own brain. I think we all know that over the last couple weeks.
If you're an adult who is sane and doesn't have those issues, just don't look at the comments.
Yeah,
I always say, don't read the comments, Hillary Clinton.
So let's talk about though how we were involved in this.
Yes, I want to show it to
important.
people. I'm going to hold it in my hand right now. I mean, this goes back. Actually, this is a Supreme Court case that just came out. In light of all of these changes, the case kind of came to a moot point. But I want you to see it and read it carefully, who the ACLJ was representing here. This is the brief, the amicus brief, representing Charlie Kirk and some others, including people like David Harris, Robbie Starbuck. And this is your ACLJ, Jay Sekulow, Stuart Roth, Jordan Sekulow, our team, Craig Parshall. We were the attorneys for Charlie Kirk fighting back against that censorship because, again, those not only were we affected, but people like him, I mean, seriously affected when they had to go find other platforms. And unfortunately, he's not here for this day when not only had Google kind of already probably done this, I don't think Charlie Kirk was having issues there.
I think that the last year they've really
But
done
to
better.
know that it wasn't just Google, that it was really like Zuckerberg had said about Facebook, that it was the Biden administration threatening them.
Yeah, and I think...
And let me tell you something. It's not telling them, hey, please do this. They say, hey, please do this, or else we might want to start looking at those exemptions you have and your immunity you have from prosecution because, you put this information up there and someone gets COVID and sick. Maybe we'll let that family sue you if we remove that. And imagine how many of those... You could put a company like Google... they'd have to, well, it would no longer be Alphabet.
Yes, they'd be broken up.
Yeah.
Be broken up into many different sources. Look, I think when you look at this, it's not shocking, but it is shocking when you actually read it. That Google is saying, yes, this is what happened. Because even Zuck, kind of like backed up. Like he said, yeah, they created a portal where they could...
He did it on his own.
He did
though.
it. Yeah, exactly.
He went and testified on his own. Yeah. He didn't require this kind of, that was, what, 2 years
so what
ago?
happened to lead to this?
Hearing, congressional oversight.
And they just said, yes, that's
House Judiciary Committee. And finally, through that and through a court order, a court decision from the district court, this was the case, leading up to our Supreme Court case, said that the White House colluded with big tech. We know this was going on. Remember the disinformation boards that they were getting rid of, but then they weren't really getting rid of. They were renaming. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is why we all jumped when the FCC said, we're gonna, if they don't do it, we're gonna change this.
Yeah,
and,
for Jimmy.
And I think he probably overspoke. I think Pam Bondi, when she said hate speech, same kind of thing. She immediately changed that to incitement, which is the real legal issues. There's no laws on hate speech and things like that. The idea here is that the more freedom of speech, this goes into, again, why we were representing Charlie Kirk in this matter. And by the way, it's just kind of a reminder of where people go in those positions who have these serious reaches. What attorneys do they turn to? When they could have turned to anyone, who do they turn to when they've got an issue like this? It's the American Center for Law and Justice. And I want to make sure everybody at Turning Point and the other organizations know that we are there for them, that we're not your competitor, that we are the attorneys, and that we also are broadcasters. We want to make sure that you're protected too, and at no cost. So you don't have to turn and spend your donor dollars on millions of dollars of legal fees. Our donors have provided the resources for us so we can defend you. And so if you're in those kind of matters, obviously higher profile folks probably could text us or call us. But even if you're not, always go to aclj.org/help. Our attorneys go through it every single day. And I will tell you, whether you're a small podcast and you're having issues, we will assist you. And we have been assisting people, whether it's Facebook, whether it's they can't do ads.
This is the beginning of all of this.
And I will tell
social
you
media.
through ACLJ Action, Logan, and through kind of our expansion work that we've done in Washington, D.C., we have better relationships with the government affairs teams of these big tech corporations. So many times we are able to get these resolved quickly without legal action. But people, if they don't tell us, and oftentimes, I'll hear from people like in Facebook and others, and they say, if you don't tell us, we don't know if the AI or the system or some guy in some other office is doing this, So you've got to, you don't imagine that we just know the problem. Always come to us with us and don't feel bad about it. So if you need that help, big organization, small, aclj.org/help.
Yeah, it's a simple form.
If
you fill it out.
If we take you on, it's no cost.
Yep, it's a simple form. You fill it out. And again, like Jordan said, whether you're a small creator, or maybe you're one of these big organizations, or maybe you're just, you have any kind of legal help that's within our scope, you just fill that out. It doesn't go to a call center. It doesn't go to some, other people that are going to then sort through it. It goes straight to one of our lawyers, and they decide whether it will be something that we can take up or not. And they'll get in touch with you very quickly. That's one of the best parts about our system is, yes, we are a big organization, but we're not too big in the sense you're calling into, when you see
Morgan & Morgan,
you're calling in. You're no offense to them, they're the biggest in that world.
Yes,
but you call them. You're talking to a call screener.
Had an issue with an 18-wheeler. Yes,
go with them. Yeah.
Well,
sure. I don't know if you go with them. There's others.
There's other options. You go local, you go big, but we're saying is
that's not what we're doing.
When
but
it comes to free speech,
when you call them, it goes often to a phone bank because they have so many people. This goes to a lawyer. This links you up directly with the ACLJ.
Yes, and that's why we did it online, because attorneys like to read, because then they can call you back or email you back and say, hey, we got this. can you provide, I've got 3 more questions for you. Or you said it was this person. Can you put me in contact with them? And we always try first to resolve issues without having to take actual court action. But we will still represent you. We're your representative, and you're not having, if we decide to take that your case on, your situation on, and it becomes a case, at no point is there any cost to you. And let me just thank our donors for that. We can continue to do that because you donate to the ACLJ. We can continue to expand to have those relationships to resolve what will be, I think the future we know is going to be more and more social media, tech kind of issues with free speech. We have to continue building up our teams in Washington, and we can do that with your continued financial support of the ACLJ. As I always say, big or small, I never want to have to say no to a case because we think it will be too expensive for the ACLJ. So far, we've never had to do that. And that's thank you to our donors. But as these cases will always continue to be more complicated, and as the issues get even more serious, we need your financial support. I mean, freedom of speech, we know, is the topic right now, and is the debate is, do we want censorship of freedom of speech or not? As you know, lawful, ugly, bad, things we don't like, things we love, it's much better to protect it all. You protect it all, that means your Christian speech, your pro-life speech, your questions about those in power get protected. If you start picking and choosing sides, you know what happens? The other side comes in, and let me tell you, the other side, the left, a lot better. As we've already seen, they didn't have any laws or rules on the books. They just used pressure.
Just pressure, and then they'll cave to it. And also because they theoretically would probably say, "Oh, maybe they're on our side in this." When you have organizations being run,
these tech companies, one, they're not really on sides, and two, I think what they have learned is that the right, because of our views on free speech, which took them some time to, I think, understand, realizes is much safer for them because we don't threaten to take away their status. We understand they need the ability to create with AI and things like that, and that means that sometimes the AI is going to say things that are bad and they need to fix, and that's okay if we're going to compete with the world.
That's right. Now, we do want to thank everyone who's also an ACLJ champion, and you become a champion today. That's someone that gives on a monthly recurring basis, essentially like a membership fee, if you will. But again, you can do that for as little as $5 a month, and you could choose how high that goes, and that really creates an incredible base for us. You do get a couple little perks here and there, but for the most part, it's just people saying, hey, I want to set it, forget it, and I want to support the ACLJ. So thanks to all our champions, and I want you to give me a call right now as well. We'll be right back.
A new case, this one's out of Maine, where the attorney general there in Maine is going after an individual, filed a civil lawsuit, trying to basically allege that his activism on a public sidewalk could be potentially heard within a clinic and therefore violates the civil rights of those individuals within the clinic because of his activism on a public sidewalk. And so this is a statute under Maine Civil Rights Act that could have a civil violation of up to $5,000 penalty and could also expose him to a Class E crime there.
It penalizes if you're intentionally making noise that can be heard within a healthcare building. I mean, how do you prove that intentional note when you're not inside the building? You don't even know what kind of soundproofing they may have inside some of these quote unquote abortion, I guess you call healthcare buildings. The second is, interfering with the safety and services, not if you're on the public sidewalk following the rules of that. But these penalties of up to $5,000 per incident and criminal prosecution, this again, these are major attacks on the basics of freedom of speech. We're talking about on the sidewalk, places that are known to be free speech zones, which thankfully most of America is when you get it into the public. This is a politically targeted attack on a type of speech. So, for instance, this is people, who, again, if you're inside a doctor's office, they don't care about the 18-wheeler that goes by, and that could cause distraction. It's because this speech, you might know, is someone who is saying what you're doing is wrong. So it's not anything really about the noise. It's about what the words are, the viewpoint.
Welcome back to Sekulow. I do want to take your calls, by the way, coming up in this half hour and in the second half hour. Phone lines are completely open. A lot of you are watching right now. A lot of you are just taking in this information. I get that. But give me a call. Did you watch also the Jimmy Kimmel return last night? Was it even available in your market? It was not available in our market. I had to go find it online. But I want to hear your thoughts on his pseudo apology. But we'll talk about that in the second half hour. Give me a call, 1-800-684-3110. Now, we don't ever want to leave you without giving you a real update on what's going on at the ACLJ. And this is another free speech battle that is happening with a very interesting ruling out of California.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another case that the abortion distortion continues, and it's out in California, which is not shocking. But this is a case where you had a sidewalk counselor who, is just, again, trying to give the people that are approaching the abortion clinic options. And they have the abortion clinics hire these abortion escorts. And what their job literally is to do is to interfere with the sidewalk counselors getting to any woman approaching the abortion clinic. And so in this situation, this involves a case where a sidewalk counselor was trying to talk to a woman, and the abortion escort gets in the middle. And as she's trying to stop him from approaching, there's some physical touching that happens. And of course, the abortion clinic files against this man. And instead of suing civilly for an injunction, they try to go around the protections that the First Amendment applies to these injunctions. They try to go around and file a workplace violence restraining order. And then what you get with that is a myriad of restrictions on this sidewalk counselor that go well beyond what the First Amendment allows.
Completely unrelated.
Completely unrelated.
What actually happened
here. One example is that there's a buffer zone of 100 yards. So basically a football field, which is way beyond. And what they have to do is an injunction can't burden more speech than is necessary. So that 100 yards is definitely burdening more speech. But Jordan, you can tell how it goes even further in ridiculous restrictions.
I want to say two things about it. One is, think about what this does to the individual, to have a workplace violence restraining order issued against them when they need employment, jobs, and things like that. I mean, it's a lot different than an injunction about how close you can get to protest. But the second part, which is shocking here, remember, in state court, is that what comes with that is a 3-year Second Amendment ban. No Second Amendment rights for this individual. Now, did they have a gun when they were there? No. Did they have illegal firearms at their home? No. Do they have in their past any kind of gun charges, anything like that? Do we even know if they're a gun owner? No.
It's just one of the
But one of the restrictions is we take away your Second Amendment rights. So because they had the audacity to protest for the unborn children being killed in those facilities, their constitutional right, Second Amendment constitutional right, not just their First Amendment right.
Basically charging like you're a felon.
Yes. Before
anything.
With the restraining order.
Right.
And again, when you're looking at a workplace violence restraining order, that's one thing. And even those have been challenged in court, but let's not even go there. This is so, again, it's so typical to see in a place like California to say, we're in the state court, let's do something that really goes and hits hard. So before we even get through the case, we're going to issue a restraining order and start really taking away this person's rights. I mean, what's next? They can't vote?
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
it feels like that vibe.
Yeah. But the issue here is that now freedom of speech can be tied to, we don't like your speech, so we're also going to take away
all of your constitutional rights.
We'll start with First Amendment.
We'll work our way down.
Go to Second Amendment. What happens next? So what I want to tell you is, again, there was I want to make it clear, no connection to a gun and the situation. I don't even know if the individual themselves is a gun owner. But they want to make that, again, part of the case is that you don't get your freedom of speech. 100 yards, which is absurd. And
100 yards.
By the way, you lose another constitutional right to protect your home, protect your family, if you want to, utilize that constitutional right. This should be shocking to everyone listening right now. And it is why the ACLJ, partnering with other attorneys in California, jumped on this and said, we've got to be a part of this, because, it's one thing with just the first part, CC, just the restriction on speech.
Right.
That's enough.
Yes.
But then you start restricting other constitutional rights in a state court setting. This is what I think Newsom and these others are talking about, Logan, when they say we are going to war, not in the physical sense, but in the legal sense, to use every option we can to punish those we disagree with. And here it is. We're going to strip you of some of your most core, basic constitutional rights because we disagree that with your speech that those children are being killed in those facilities.
Yeah, and it's a total circumvention of the First Amendment protection. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to say we know that we can't get anything under the First Amendment because it protects his right to this speech. So we're going to now try this workplace violence, restraining order. And like you said, it was a complete ban on possession and ownership of a gun, which had nothing to do with anything in this situation. So what's interesting is we had the Animal Activist Legal Defense Project join with us on this amicus, because anybody who wants to use their voice to say anything, correct, you are a target now of this type of runaround of the First Amendment.
Logan, I think this is interesting in CC too, is we saw some years where I think people were like, the protester with the sign. We even saw at the ACLJ, people were just not as excited necessarily about these cases.
Yeah, the tone changed.
But
when you protest.
But I think after what happened with Charlie Kirk, and we saw on campus how important protecting freedom of speech is, people have now shifted back and said, you know what? Like the message, pro-life message, don't like the animal right message, maybe like both. Some people do. In the pro-life movement, there are a lot of those who are also pro-animal rights. Fine, is that they understand, wow, there's a war on just speech that people don't like or that annoy people, and we have to protect all of it. And at the ACLJ, while we typically, our clients come from our viewpoint because that's who they reach out to and who we reach out to.
It's not always the case, though.
We're protecting everyone's free speech right, not just those we agree with. And I think what we learned in the last few weeks is that is the goal of the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, so that we can have dialogue that isn't nasty, that isn't angry, that we can go back to where we can go to the dinner table or have friends that are politically on the other side of the aisle, and we're not afraid to and we don't have to, even if we're still friends, we don't have to ignore talking about issues. And I think that because when we stop talking, and I think people have said this, but it is true, when you stop talking and you just demonize, you get violence. And that's why the First Amendment is so important. Dialogue actually prevents violence.
All right, we will be back absolutely in just a minute, so stay tuned. We do have a second half hour coming up on the broadcast. The ACLJ is getting involved in all this. We'll also talk about what our next steps will be. But I want to hear from you, too, at 1-800-684-3110. But if you don't get us in your local market, you can find us broadcasting live on YouTube, on Rumble, on ACLJ.org. However you get your podcasts, we are there. And, of course, support the work of the ACLJ. Yes. This is a very important time. Become a champion, really. It's a great time to do that. Go to ACLJ.org. Opt in. Become a champion. That's something that gives on a monthly recurring basis. Help us take this to all 50 states, all the work that we do here at the ACLJ and around the world.
Some people think champions are bored, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
But being a champion only requires a decision. Choosing what is right, even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, or that it can't be done, and then following it through no matter the cost.
It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can change things. You can make a difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty. A champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Sekulow. And now your host, Logan Sekulow.
Welcome back to Sekulow. Second half hour coming up, and phone lines are open for you at 1-800-684-3110. My brother Jordan Sekulow is joining us right now as well in studio. And we were talking about a couple different things. One, Google saying, hey, you know what? Not only were we were censoring those accounts because the Biden administration told us we had to or else. And they have now said, hey, if you were one of those creators that we took down, time to hop back on our platform. It's time to do that. This is a big move. This is a good move, by the way. Look, Google had to get to this to admit to it. We know people like Facebook and Meta earlier on admitted to this is what was happening. But I think it's good. I think it's good to have new creators that can come into the platform not scared of what they're going to say or not say or get demonetized. Obviously, there is common decency that we want to support. But if you go on YouTube, of course, you're not necessarily always going to find that. But just as a dad and as someone who wants good creators out there, I want people creating good stuff that's good for your brains. But, of course, this does help in the freedom of speech side of this. And, of course, this is in the wake of everything that's happening, including the return to television after, 3 days off, of Jimmy Kimmel Live, which, of course, created a huge spike in numbers. And they put a thing that said President Trump, one of his responses was, well, people are going to watch tonight. It's right. Now we'll see if people continue to watch. I watched the 30-minute monologue that was not available in our local market.
What was he, amongst the three, where was he?
Last.
Okay, so last night, was he?
He probably will be number one. They haven't put out the official ratings, but just on YouTube, the monologue has done, I think, close to 9 million.
All right, but
views.
Tonight, do you think he goes back to being number 3?
We'll see. It was, they've packed it with some good guests. They have some very neutral guests. Last night
after the first
last
week,
night was Glenn Powell from Twisters and Peyton Manning.
Okay.
Everybody
loves.
That everyone loves.
Might as well put the Savannah Bananas on too.
Yeah, exactly.
But what will be interesting to see is if by next week, Jimmy Kimmel's back to
a million,
third
ish
place,
people. I would love to see what people's thoughts were because I watched the whole 30 minutes. I think that there were some good moments in it. I think there were some not so good moments in it. Turning Point did not say we're thrilled with it because he didn't come back and really give them an apology. He apologized to the audience, said he never wanted to trivialize someone's death. He did honestly a good moment where he got visibly emotional, whether you want to believe him or not. I can't really say one way or the other. Where all of a sudden he gets overwhelmed emotion talking about
that wasn't off the cuff.
Erica Kirk.
I want to make sure that they understand these guys are reading teleprompters.
Yeah. Very scripted. And he talks about Erica Kirk forgiving the shooter. He mentioned he was a follower of Jesus' teachings. These were the words you did not expect to hear out of Jimmy Kimmel. But of the 30 minutes, I would say a good 15 to 20 of it was sillier conversation about President Trump and the FCC. And he gave props to the conservatives that stood up for him, including Ted Cruz, who's like his number one enemy, Ben Shapiro, and a lot of those people who came out and said that they did it. So he gave some props to them.
It wasn't really so much standing up for Jimmy Kimmel. It was saying the FCC should not be doing this threat. It wasn't like people cared about Jimmy Kimmel coming back or not. They shouldn't be making that decision because the FCC. They should be making the decision because he said something horrendous. And it was probably, they should have said it was more like he's going to
we're going to let it cool down.
A cool down or ban, a temporary.
Temporarily, that's why I said, like Fox does when there's a tragedy, gut feel doesn't go on. They don't do the show.
Right.
They say, you know what? This is not the right time.
Right.
They go to continue news. Now, I watched last night on our Nexstar station to see what they ran. They ran another hour-long, essentially deep dive news piece. I stayed for about 25 seconds. This was Nexstar, because Nexstar and Sinclair both were not airing the show. I don't even know. Local stuff. Local news created. I'm sure it was good.
Do you want to play what Jimmy Kimmel said?
We're going to play some of it. And I want to get your feedback as well. We're not going to spend too much time on it, but I think you should hear some of what he had to say and get your opinions across. Again, you can give us a call at 1-800-684-3110 because it all is under this sort of censorship concept and where we step in, where we don't, where we agree, where we disagree, where the advertisers and the network should have said something, maybe not the FCC. I think if you didn't have that,
and the
people,
a
whole different story.
The people really, viewers are who, because that's where the money comes from is advertising. And if people aren't watching, the advertising goes lower. And these shows, like you said, are so expensive to produce. It seemed like they were all kind of going the way of the dinosaur.
Absolutely.
Especially if the number one was gone.
Yep. All right. Hey, we'll be right back in just a moment.
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle, and then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter.
I put out a statement earlier. There was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the president of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter.
And I don't mind making the speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you, nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
I think he handled the teleprompter thing well. It was a joke, and he started reading. The White House press secretary, Brian, Caroline Leavitt, actually did pose a question asking whether there was something nefarious going on, particularly with the escalator. The timing there, it does raise some questions. Literally the moment that you see Melania Trump, First Lady, get on, it stopped. There's some reporting from the Times of London that there were staffers at the UN joking over the weekend that, as sort of a payback to President Trump, who has been critical of the UN, that they would specifically mess with the elevators.
So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to literally trip up the president and the First Lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people. And I will personally see to it, Jesse.
Good.
Yeah, if you were watching during the break, we are going to discuss also the UN speech President Trump gave yesterday, which was filled with some, I guess you'd say, technical difficulties, including an escalator that broke as soon as...
Let me say, they weren't technical difficulties.
Right.
As someone who's done a lot of this at the UN, yes, the UN is pretty junky. And they always say it's because of the U.S. funding. It's also because they won't turn the air conditioning on because of climate change. I was there in Geneva in the summer, and I think it was 77 degrees inside the building. Outside in Geneva, it was cooler. I mean, because you're on the lake, and you're like, what is this? Is to the point of when people are sweating and uncomfortable in a setting that's supposed to be formal, but you realize again, and I remember telling you there live from there, we were the only Americans in the building.
Well, they are the Secret Service is going to investigate this as potential sabotage, as we found out that there was multiple people online that were joking about whether this could happen. Before it happened, saying, what if the elevator broke down?
UN staff was actually heard by New York Times.
Yeah, I think some of it's up on the screen right now. You can see people were talking about it, saying that, it'd be funny if when this president steps on the escalator or the elevators, that maybe it shuts
UN
down.
Staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell him they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. Yeah. I will tell you this. That's because they keep saying because the U.S. pulling funding, which, by the way, we still provide a lot of funding to the UN. Second, definitely done intentionally, 100%. I've been there.
It was as soon as Melania stepped on it. I mean, that's the one thing, is that the timing was so, you're watching it right now. It's working. She steps 1 foot on it, and it shuts down. Give me a break.
And there's multiple. I mean, there's multiple.
The others are going fine. Yes, and done.
Trying to make her fall and him fall.
Yeah, she loses her balance, and theoretically you'd think he'd fall. I mean, honestly, if they're not as good at sabotage, you do it a little bit further up. That's what happened.
Well, I think they're a little nervous about having the president of the United States potentially fall, and then of course the teleprompter. Right. I will tell you this again: the teleprompter is a very very simple piece of technology.
It is. For some reason, they can't get it right.
But I'm telling you,
it's like a printer.
Did they have problems with any other speaker?
No, I don't know. I didn't. No. I did not care to watch the rest.
They did not.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling you, this was all done as sabotage because they knew that Donald Trump was coming there to tell them what the truth was. If you don't get your countries in order,
get the hostages out,
by the way, and you let your countries be overrun by radicals like the UK and others, I will say France and some of these other countries have done a much better job on immigration than others. After being there over the summer, you've been in the UK, I've been in the UK, they have kind of just let it go. And I think, he made that message. it was also interesting because they and I think they kind of messed up because he also had planned that day and still did it a big reversal on Russia and Ukraine, which we haven't gotten to, where he said, you know what, I've been dealing with this Putin guy now for 2 administrations, enough.
Doubling down, kind of.
I'm going to give, if NATO wants to purchase U.S. weaponry, they can use it however they want. I think that's after all these drones have gotten close to European cities, and you've seen all these airports have to shut down because of Russian drones suspected. There was also this big, did you say Secret Service fine in New York of all those servers that had the ability to shut down all cell service?
Yes.
Let me tell you who was likely responsible for that.
Yeah.
Russians.
And at the same moment, you also had, I sent it to you, Russia is definitely on a weird PR move campaign too, because they did their own alternate version of the Eurovision Song Contest, which is something that my family, we get around, we watch it every year. And
most of the world somehow participated, but not the actual country.
But not the
right?
one it was as Russian as you'd expect, because it was all these countries a lot of countries that are not allowed. So I think Cuba, Russia, ones that have issues. And then it said the United States. And
that's what I saw. It's like, what?
We went and we looked it up, and it was an Australian singer who lived here for a couple of years, who had moved back already, but they found a way to kind of loophole an American. But it opened with Putin coming out, making a statement. It was in English and it was in Russian. No, I forgot who won. I can find out who won it.
Venezuela.
It was I think Russia knows better than to win it. They're like, we should.
Ukraine was not there.
No, I don't think so. But they're doing all these and look, it was a
lot of those countries wouldn't be in Eurovision because they're not in Europe.
Yes,
too.
but there's some rules there. They kind of
is the UAE usually in Eurovision?
Sometimes I think they
Saudi
are.
Arabia?
There's a big, huge problem right now with Israel. Israel is right now 3 or 4 of the major countries have said they're going to protest if Israel's allowed to perform this year. Because
and usually they do.
This is like Spain. Israel's usually top 10 because they make crazy pop music, and that's I know this is totally off topic here, but what I say is Russia's
actually
creating.
Important for people to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah, when you watch something like this, and it was available on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Now I always thought it was going to be available on like Rumble maybe or like
RT,
but no, it was actually on YouTube. This sort of Russian song contest made for the world stage. I think you're going to see Putin try more of those kind of things
because he has lost Trump now,
right?
For now, and so and what Trump said, and which is very clear, is that he now believes that Russia is a paper tiger.
Vietnam won,
and that interesting, and that. Because they're a paper tiger, he said, any real military, let's be honest, should have been able to overrun Ukraine if you're the size of Russia in days, like we all talked about years ago. And this kind of indiscriminate killing, and now these drones in Europe, enough. I'm going to let NATO do what they want. If they want to buy our weapons and go after the Russians, go for it. What that means for the United States, we'll have to have some others on to talk about that. But you know what? The UN really messed up because he was going to give a message, probably one message they actually agree with that they've been looking for the United States, and I believe President Trump on this. I think he really, really has tried. I mean, he went to Alaska to work with Putin, and even like Melania said, every time he walked there, he said, "Great remarks," and then she'd say, "Yeah, but they just blew up, a maternity ward," and so. When they could have had a great moment at the UN. Instead, it's all overrun by, he talked about the AI and bioweapons and trying to secure those. These are things that the UN would like, but because they have Trump derangement syndrome, I mean, so they're like...
are doing some ridiculous things.
And let me tell you something, Secret Service does need to get to the bottom of it because that was dangerous on using any kind of shutting down.
Yeah, whoever had access to that,
and
if
then,
that's real.
On just impacting his speech, I don't know about that necessarily be dangerous, the crime, but again, those staffers should be fired.
It becomes the story instead of whatever the speech was going to be.
Listen, even if you're the Russian speaker or this speaker, that shouldn't happen to you.
Well, the Russians are interesting because in that song contest, one of the things they majorly pushed in it is, if you've been a fan of the Eurovision Song Contest, it has gotten a little out of control in terms of it's not as family friendly as it used to be. It can be a bit intense, and Russia came out and said, well, our version is completely family friendly. We are conservative values. We are family values. Trying to push a different narrative coming out of Russia as well, which is you're not going to see. I mean, oddly enough, it is the messaging you get from a lot of a lot of the conservative Christian organizations is what was coming out of Russia. So I know they're playing this sort of marketing. They're trying, especially when you have people even on the right and kind of publicly proclaiming their love, it feels like, for Russia and for Vladimir Putin. Phone lines are open for you. We're going to take as many as we can coming up at 1-800-684-3110. Before we head to break, because let's just set up the Jimmy Kimmel thing. I want you to hear from Jimmy Kimmel. This is part of his apology. If you say quote-unquote apology last night that happened. Let's do this, and we'll head to break, and we'll talk about it coming up.
I don't think what I have to say is going to make much of a difference. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. I have no illusions about changing anyone's mind. But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever.
And if that is where things had ended, I think, with Jimmy Kimmel, I think a lot of us said, okay, it wasn't maybe a full-fledged apology, but at least it was some. But then it just went into his typical 20-minute kind of rant against, he went around the FCC, had a lot of Trump jokes, had a lot of stuff, and then circled back around and did a full another segment that then ended by saying that how moved he was by Erica Kirk's speech. A very similar tone to this beginning. So I understand it's a comedy show. They want to pack it forward. What he certainly did not do was say, we're going to try to chill the tone. He said, you know what the show is. He even admitted that, he said, when we started the show, it was a comedy late night talk show. And it's not really anymore. I mean, he pretty much said that almost word for word, saying this is a political commentary show.
MSNBC.
And the fact that they have them saying that, was pretty interesting. It should change the way, honestly, guests decide to go on the show. Because if you're going to admit to say this is just a political news show or a political commentary show, then I don't know if you should be getting Peyton Manning. I don't know if you should be getting some of these top leading names. Because I don't feel like if you had said, hey, come on and do one of these shows on CNN, you likely are going to get those guys to show up. We'll be back with your calls and comments coming up in just a moment.
Google's control over what people hear, watch, read, and say is unprecedented. Almost 90% of internet searches in the United States use Google. Google's domination of the search engine market is so complete that to Google is now a commonplace verb.
Google announcing it will reinstate YouTube channels that were permanently banned for political speech, saying it was pressured by the Biden administration to remove content that did not even violate YouTube's policies. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee, a lawyer for Google said, quote, it is unacceptable and wrong when any government, including the Biden administration, attempts to dictate how the company moderates content, and the company has consistently fought against those efforts on First Amendment grounds.
They were pushing social media companies, forcing them to censor people like me and, frankly, people like RFK Jr. He and I were probably the two people who faced the most overt censorship back in 2021.
Some of the bans were for posting about COVID-19 or the 2020 election. This comes after Representative Jim Jordan subpoenaed Alphabet's CEO, alleging that YouTube was a direct participant in the federal government's censorship.
So here's a company who said yes. The Biden administration pressured us. We, in fact, did it. We kicked people off, took their channels from them. Those people are going to be reinstated. And we've admitted that what we did was not consistent with the First Amendment in any way.
They always, try to absolve themselves by saying, well, we censored based on what we knew at the time. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's actually an argument against censorship because it's a concession that knowledge changes over time, which means that if it does change over time, you might be censoring the truth right now. So we shouldn't be engaged in censorship. The best way to get to the truth is through open discourse and debate.
Hey, all right, phone lines, we're going to go to you next because you've been waiting on hold for a long time. I'll make sure you get your voice heard as well. This is going to kind of cover all the topics.
Be nice to the phone screeners.
Yeah,
they want to get you on the air.
Yeah, so just don't curse. Let's go to Sean in Florida first. You've been holding for half an hour, Sean.
And they're dealing with us who keep talking.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Hey, guys. Thank you for all the work you do. So I'll be very brief with this. So
take your time.
I know a lot of people. Okay, thank you. I know a lot of people will want to say, oh, they don't want to hear what I'm going to say. But I think after what's happened with Mr. Kirk, I think we have to strategically adjust what we're doing. So my point is this. Moving forward, I think that all public speakers, especially when they're getting to be larger ones, I think that all public speakers moving forward should have bulletproof glass in front of them. Even if it's a small event, maybe a sheet or two, it's highly effective, it's extremely cheap, and it's very mobile. People come, they set it up just like the president. It's effective. And if we would have had that in place that day, either it would have deflected or the guy wouldn't even have shown up to do it because he knew it would have been pointless.
Yeah, Sean, I understand your point. I mean, there's the pros and cons of it in terms of your way you connect with an audience.
I think it's a speaker's decision at this point. And as Logan said, as guys who have been on stages, large, small, who've done those events where you want to be more grassrootsy, if you had that kind of barrier and you're already on a stage, one, that's even more difficult to connect to an audience. But then two, if you were doing kind of like what Charlie was doing, that wouldn't have worked at all.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, do I agree with you that I don't think the person probably would have even taken a shot knowing that there was some sort of bulletproof vest? You're probably right, Sean. But does that...
A lot of these guys are wearing vests.
Yeah,
that doesn't protect everything.
It's tough. It's a tough decision to make. I think it's one that I don't think we should say has to or don't have to. But I think security in general needed to be better, and I think we need to look at...
And we saw at the event that the president now usually almost always. Now he walks around it.
To the point of making me nervous, to be honest. At the very end, when he was with Erica at the end, I'm like, get off the stage. And I know the point, and it was a beautiful moment, but your heart rate starts going.
Really see it. There's some kind of like reflection still.
There is a disconnection.
Yes. And I think people get it when it's the President of the United States, the Pope, things like that. When it becomes kind of your activist that you've waited, hours to see and maybe interact with, that becomes a lot like you're going to go to a concert and the band's going to be behind a screen there.
It's like a COVID meet and greet kind of thing.
We don't want to be at that point in the world. The truth is, this is why we're talking about dialogue and making sure those who have obviously both a mix of political anger, where I disagree with Jimmy Kimmel, and psychological issues mixing together, that we need to do a better job, and those families need to do a better job of letting law enforcement know so they're not just running rampantly during events like that when they're telling people, basically. And our laws are trying to figure that out. We've seen that with some of the school shootings and parents being prosecuted because they assisted or they knew and they did not notify law enforcement in time. At the same time, this is, again, I think it's up to the speaker. So if you're someone who says, you know what, I only feel comfortable doing it this way right now, if that's what Erica Kirk said right now, I don't think anybody...
I think she was the only one, I think, that used it other than the president during that.
No,
right?
wasn't it all of the government speakers?
Did all the government speakers? I'm not
yes,
positive about
I
that.
think
Maybe you're right. Maybe the government, maybe the non-government speakers, she may have been the only one that did. Also, she led into President Trump.
Yes,
so
I think once it moved from the Turning Point team to the administration officials, that's when I think it went behind.
Yeah, I have some friends who work in the business of that.
And sometimes the Secret Service just says, they just beg, and they say, please, this makes our job so much easier if you're going to let in, 100,000 people or 80,000 people to this. Just if you're going to have half the cabinet speak, including the president and vice president and all the rest of them there in the crowd, when they're up there, please do this for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and take a couple more calls. Let's go to Edward, who's calling in Oregon. Edward, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing today, gentlemen?
Hey, Edward.
I was calling in regards to the abortion clinic and the unlawful rulings that are coming out.
Yes.
and you did state that your First Amendment right is definitely abridged, but then they come after your Second Amendment.
Right.
The part that you're missing is they also hit you on the Fifth Amendment, because as you're convicted, you lose your right to unlawful search and seizure and the right of self-incrimination. As convicted, they can come to your house and search whatever you want. Even if you don't have a gun, they can search your house without a warrant because you've been convicted to see if you have a gun.
And this person has not been convicted, and as of now has lost this constitutional right for 3 years. And this I think, Edward, might even make you more angry. The way California and this court would like this to end, I don't believe this will end this way, but the way they would like this to end is that these, like the Second Amendment rights and other rights that like the 100 yards and firearms, even at his own home. They're not even saying like a concealed carry. They're saying ownership. So if he does own a weapon, which maybe he does legally, I guess he has to go through some process to turn that in. All of that is so unconstitutional and complicated. But it doesn't just say 3 years and that's it. 3 years and can be renewed. Why? Like, who gets to make the renewal? Just because, well, hey, it's working. The guy hasn't shown up.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything wrong.
Or does he have to violate the order, which again we believe won't be upheld anyways? But what I'm saying here is, like you said, Edward, they actually wanted to do this indefinitely without a conviction, hoping he didn't have anybody come to his defense.
It was like being convicted of a felony without ever being convicted of anything.
Right. And
getting the consequences.
The only thing you weren't getting was actually being put in jail.
Yep. Let's go ahead and take a call. We'll see if we can answer it.
I would tell you, impact on getting jobs and things like that.
That changes everything.
Yep.
Let's go to Roger quickly in Alabama. Roger, go ahead.
I've got a good one for you. I was an amateur radio operator for about 20 years, and we had to study the FCC rules and regulations on how our transmissions went out.
I bet.
It's called 95.7, and your transmission had to be beautiful. It couldn't have any noise in it. You couldn't cuss, and there were other things you couldn't do. And you couldn't get on there and transmit false information.
Yeah,
and
Roger,
I don't.
I think what's changing that is is a much blurrier topic now with the government.
I think
we don't want them to be, by the way.
I think a lot of the false information they were talking about was false information that would lead people to believe they were under attack.
Or
violence.
there's a tornado coming.
Yeah, yes, that you don't joke around with
the
that.
world of the ward situation.
But we've been talking about it here behind the scenes, that the FC, all of this kind of content, we're working on something actually now with another major organization, corporation, with FCC issues and some of these broadcast issues and antitrust issues. And I will tell you, it all probably, instead of piecemeal, my idea is if you want to revamp it. The piecemeal, from the 1940s and 50s, it's not going to work. So
you change the way content
either
moderation is taken care
revamp
of.
or let it stand. And as you're seeing, we're moving away from it anyways. The sports is moving away from it. You're able to get broadcast in how many different ways? Yes, your ears still work, right?
Not your buddy. There are antennas. There's HD antennas. Yes. There's a lot of those were taken away. A lot of those the government runs now, but there is HD versions of it, digital versions. All right, that's gonna do it for today's show. Support the work of the ACLJ while you're at it. I know we've been all over the map today.
But understand we're doing all of this work.
Yeah, and all around the world. Be a part of our team, even internationally, at aclj.org. Take a look at the great free info we give you, free content, and all of it's free because you support the work. Talk to you tomorrow.